Good afternoon and welcome to the Bushveld Minerals Limited investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll, and I'd now like to hand you over to Craig Coltman, CEO. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon and welcome to our corporate update call. Thank you for dialing in. I'm joined today by Jan-Andre Lambrecht, our Acting Chief Financial Officer. In this presentation, I'm going to talk you through Bushveld's journey over the past few months, our transactions around funding, the guidance released, and overall expectations for the group in 2024. Reflecting on the transaction summary, over the past few months, Bushveld has embarked on a transformative journey, both operationally and at a corporate level. Today, I'm pleased to share key highlights from our recent transactions and corporate decisions that signify the progress we've made and set the stage for our future growth. Most recently, we have successfully raised a substantial amount of capital through an equity placing, securing a total of $18.5 million. This injection comes at a premium to the prevailing share price, which we believe represents confidence in Bushveld's future. Southern Point Resources demonstrated strong support, committing $12.5 million alongside contributions from existing investors, Acacia and Orange Trust, as well as retail investors, as well as board directors. The primary allocation of these funds will be directed towards capital expenditure for Vametco and Vanchem to sustain operations. Additionally, we intend to use these financial resources to reduce debt levels, making good on payments to creditors, bolstering working capital, and will facilitate the restructuring of Orion's convertible loan note. This comprehensive approach reflects our commitment to fortifying our operational foundations while strategically managing our financial structure. I'd like to note here that Southern Point Resources' cornerstone investment in the recent equity raise is part of a broader commitment. SPR is set to invest between $70 and $77 million cumulatively, underscoring their belief in the long-term potential of Bushveld. As part of the ongoing restructuring efforts, we are pleased to announce that Orion will be capitalizing approximately $4.7 million of its outstanding convertible loan notes at the same price of 3p per share as the recent equity placing. Please can I further remind all shareholders that the equity placing and the Orion convertible loan note restructuring will only be approved via a majority vote at the general meeting, which is to be held on the 27th of December. Please ensure you vote accordingly. If I can move on to the source and use of proceeds slide. As you can see from the tables on this slide, I'm pleased to state that through the strategic sale of the 50% in Vanchem and Mokopane proceeds, coupled with the fundraising from SPR, Acacia, Orange Trust, directors, and the primary bid retail offer, we have a cumulative $42 million in total. Of these funds, we earmarked a significant portion towards sustaining and maintenance capex, predominantly directed towards the Vametco in the total of $19 million, where we'll work forward to rebuilding the Barren Dam and also an amount of just short of $12 million for Vanchem. These funds also serve to bolster the overall financial health of the company and facilitate the smooth continuance of our operations, in addition to repaying part of our existing debt obligations. Moving on to slide 5. And particularly focus on SPR. Firstly, we have successfully secured an interim working capital of $8 million already received, and this will be offset amongst pay amounts payable in the future by SPR. We've announced a definite agreement for the sale of 50% of Vanchem and are working towards progressing a definitive agreement for the sale of our 64% stake in Mokopane. These sales to SPR offer a total consideration of $25 million. Additionally, as part of the equity placing, SPR is making an equity investment in Bushveld for a total of $12.5 million and has the option to subscribe for a further $1.5 million in value of new shares at the same issue price of 3p. This needs to be done before the end of 28 February 2024, entitling them to nominate one non-executive director to our board. Further to this, a 3-year marketing and sales appointment has been established with SPR, supplemented by a provisional working capital facility in the order of $25 to $30 million. And finally, looking ahead, there is a future commitment from SPR to invest in the order of $7 to $10 million directly into Vanchem. If I can move on to the Orion convertible note refinancing structure. On this slide, I'm going to talk through a breakdown of how we plan to handle our debt obligations from Orion convertible loan note, totaling approximately $47 million. 10% of this amount, $4.7 million, will be converted into a subscription for the share price of 3p. 30% of the convertible loan note will remain a convertible note. This matures in the middle of 2028. The remaining 60%, or roughly $28 million, will be converted into a term loan maturing in 2026. There are conditions present to completing, including the raise of at least $12 million. That was the minimum threshold. Also, shareholder approval at the upcoming meeting, completion of the share exchange transaction between Bushveld and the BE minority shareholders in Vametco, and of course, consent from the South African Reserve Bank. We feel that this structure is well suited to the company's strategy going forward and aligns with our cash flow projections. If I can move on to slide 7 and look at the operations production. Several initiatives were implemented in July 2023, which I've spoken about previously, at the aim of getting Vanchem to a sustainable level of production. I've mentioned this many times before, but it's worthwhile repeating that we changed the reagent mix to a 70-30 mix between sodium carbonate and sodium sulfate, which has helped the kiln. We've deployed what I call the A-team from Vametco to Vanchem to assist them with knowledge sharing and transfer and transformation to ensure immediate decision-making. That accumulated, amongst other things, in the month of October to 178 metric volume ton, the highest ever in the history of Vanchem since we bought it. What is even more pleasing, October saw a positive EBITDA of just short of $500,000. Meanwhile, Vametco's production has been impacted by constraints at the Barren Dam, and that shouldn't be news or new news. We're making progress on these fronts and anticipate achieving a sustainable monthly production of around 200 mtV at Vametco. If I can move on to the group production performance and guidance. Turning to group production performance, we'll see that we remain on track to meet our 2023 production guidance of between 3,700 and 3,900 metric ton volume, along with the associated cash cost guidance. As announced this morning, we're also prioritizing initiatives to contain costs and enhance operational efficiency, aligning with our commitment to financial prudence. This includes a saving of at least $1.5 million per annum through the restructuring at our head office. Looking forward to 2024, assuming equity fundraising is approved at the general meeting, we're targeting a guidance of 4,300 to 4,500 metric ton volume, which is about a 10 to 15% increase on the 2023 numbers, and a production cash cost of in the order of $26 to $27 per kilogram, per kgV. Looking at some of our near-term priorities, the immediate focus obviously is to conclude the Orion convertible loan refinancing, the SPR package, and of course the total equity raise. Important to close out on the acquisition of the BE minorities interest in Vametco, and then of course we've already engaged our brokers to solicit potential buyers for the sale process of our stake in Celsius. Additionally, we'll continue to prioritize and implement cost initiatives. We've done reasonably well at the corporate center. Of course, the next is the operations. In terms of our operational targets, we remain on track to achieve our 2023 guidance, as I previously stated. Looking ahead to 2024, and assuming the successful equity fundraise proceeds, we are setting ourselves production targets ranging from 4,300 to 4,500. Concurrent to this, we aim to maintain a competitive production cash cost within the range of $26 to $27 per kg. In tandem with these operational goals, it's our priority to improve operational performance and reduce debt. Looking at the last slide and summarizing it all up around the reason and the compelling argument for a investment case in Bushveld Minerals. Our foundation rests on a solid asset base, and we strategically position for future growth. That's been demonstrated at Vanchem as well. The initiatives we discussed today underscore our commitment to maximizing the potential for our operations. The ongoing restructuring of our convertible loan notes is a pivotal move towards improving capital structure. Coupled with our recent equity raise, we now stand on a solid financial foundation that positions us for the effective execution of our growth strategies. Further to this, we are committed to simplifying our group structure, which has the potential to deliver significant benefits. Lastly, we are well poised to capitalize on the expected medium to long-term increase in vanadium demand. Thank you very much for your time. I'd like to pause now and take questions.
Perfect. Craig, thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab, which is situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the company can take a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Craig, as you can see, I've received a number of questions throughout today's presentation, and if I could just hand back to you just to read out the questions and give responses where it's appropriate to do so, I'll pick up from you at the end.
Fine, go ahead.
Over to you, Craig.
All right, I'm reading the questions on my screen now. So I read the questions out first. All right, thank you. Just a change in process. Forgive me. First question. Are you going to continue to erode shareholders' value through the issuance of new shares? Are you planning in the near future a share buyback? The equity raise is a much-needed cash injection for Bushveld. The company first flagged its need for additional funding in the 2022 full-year results and subsequently in the 2023 interim accounts. We were very mindful of wanting to mitigate the effect of dilution to shareholders and managed to raise the funding at a 33% premium to the share price. In terms of priorities, we are going to focus on the core assets of the business, which are the Metco and Vanchem, de-gear the balance sheet, and implement sustainable cost-saving initiatives like the head office restructuring, which we announced this morning. Buybacks will only be considered once the above priorities have been successfully executed and the business is at a steady state, and of course, it will be a function of the vanadium price, which you all probably know is very cyclical. The next question is, please provide an update on Lima. Lima is a non-core asset for us, and we're looking at ways to exit Lima while creating value for our shareholders. As we announced with some of our other assets recently, we've been working at this, and we'll continue to work hard at it. I'm hoping to be able to provide an update in the coming months. Third question is, on the investors meeting on the 29th of September, Craig said, I would love to buy shares ASAP, and he's very frustrated he cannot due to inside information. He said he would use his entire salary to buy if he could. This was widely seen as a strong vote of confidence, and whilst a purchase is a personal decision, does Craig have a comment on why his allowed purchase in the placing was so small, and what message does that send given earlier comment? That's a very fair question. Thank you for raising it. I did say that I was committed to use the entire proceeds. It was about October last year when I said I'd use the net proceeds of the first 4 months' salary to purchase shares, and I'm still committed to making those further purchases. My current uptake that I've subscribed to in the order of 833,000 equates to a little bit more than 60% of my total commitment. I remain committed to that comment I made on the 29th of September. Next question. When these various deals and placings are done, what assurance do investors have that at this level of dilution, there will be no more placings in the next 12 to 18 months at least? Firstly, as a company, we want to minimize and avoid unnecessary dilution for all shareholders. With the funding raised and the various initiatives we are implementing to reduce cost, increase the company's production and profitability, I'm aiming for the company not to require any substantial funding for at least the next 24 months. Hopefully, we'll see a recovery in the vanadium price during 2024. Fifth question. One of the significant investment choices discussed earlier was the need to build a new Barren Dam. How long, assuming all packages are approved, will this take, and when could the bottleneck, if possible, be removed such to increase throughput? The Barren Dam will be executed through a phased approach, which will take approximately 2 years to build the full Barren Dam. However, the increased output that will be unconstrained will start to show in 2025 after the completion of the first phase. Question 6, do you have a figure and time frame in mind for the sales of essentially Cellsub, given the long-term high level of sunk cost? Should we expect to get more for our share of Cellsub than we put in terms of the investment? As previously mentioned, we're exploring alternative options for Bushveld Energy. We, of course, would like to dispose of Cellsub as soon as possible. However, we need to make sure we do so in a manner that creates the maximum value for our shareholders. We have engaged our brokers to kickstart the process, and they're in the process of rounding up potential buyers. An update on the process and sale price will be provided at the appropriate time. Next, is any relationship with Mustang now over? Bushveld holds in the order of 15% of Mustang issued share capital. Furthermore, as a result of this decision to undertake a broader sale process of Bushveld's interest in Cellsub, we advise that we will not be signing a revised share exchange agreement with Mustang. I think that makes a very clear statement. Next, assuming samples are approved by customers, what percentage premium might we expect from the sale of electrolyte compared to current sale of vanadium byproducts? As mentioned in the Q3 operational update, a batch of electrolyte was produced to fulfill a small order and samples. These samples were distributed to 9 international customers in an attempt to qualify Belco and its electrolyte with battery companies. We'll provide more information on Belco's sale profile, once suitable offtakes of the product are secured. What I can tell you is that of the 9 batches we sent out, 3 have come back and have approved Belco as a preferred supplier of electrolyte. No orders forthcoming yet. And 2 of the larger companies asked for additional volumes of electrolyte samples, 5,000 liters, which will be dispatched, and they will pay for that. I wouldn't classify that as an offtake, but that's where we are. So 3 in total have approved. Another 2 have asked for more bigger quantities of samples. The total premium percentage would depend significantly on the vanadium price and the individual sales contracts. Next, what are the company's projections regarding how continued global VRFB uptake will affect vanadium prices in the short, medium, and long term? We rely on projections provided by independent research houses, most of which seem to have a positive outlook on VRFB. The proposed dilution in December is without knowing if the Orion deal is final and done. Why should we vote for it without knowing the final picture. The final picture of the Orion restructuring was announced on the 27th of November, and I've tried to do that by demonstrating what it looks like on slide 8. We do not expect any changes to the terms and structure that we announced previously. As mentioned during the presentation, the restructuring of the Orion convertible loan is conditional, amongst other things, of the completion of the BE minority transaction and Reserve Bank approval, as well as shareholder approval. Hence, neither the Orion restructuring nor the equity placing can close without shareholders approving these transactions. We encourage all shareholders to vote in favour of all resolutions. We've assessed all possible outcomes, various funding options, and believe this is the best way to put the company on a strong footing going forward. Next question, what is the lowest all-sustaining cost the company can achieve? We provided 2024 C1 production cash cost guidance of a $26 to $27 range. We expect production cash guidance to decrease as we increase production over time. We currently do not provide all-sustaining cost guidance. Previously, Craig stated that he would be working closely with former CEO Fortune on aspects outside the mining side. How's that going? Is Craig still working with Fortune? And if so, in what capacity? Is Fortune still on the payroll? I did make that statement. I didn't work closely with him for very long because given our stated intention to sell our interest in CellTube, we are no longer working with Fortune on any aspects of the business. There are no further payments to Fortune at this stage. Next question. We have been informed in the results of the book building RNS that sustaining capex next year is rising to $24 million at Vanchem and Vametco from just $7 million that we were guided in 2023. Is this due to a failure of previous management, and will this sort of be a once-off or an exception? I've discussed the expected capital spend on slide 4 of the presentation and in prior answers. What is worth noting that what appears on slide 4 is a 2-year window, but it's a good observation. It is about 12 million per annum, which is significantly higher than what we've done in the past. If you look at the average spend at Vametco over the last 4 years in the order of $3.5 million, and you take the average spend in 2023 for Vanchem, you'll get to a number of about $6 million. $5.5 to $6 million is what we've been spending on average on SIB. That is not sustainable. The bow wave is coming. But if you look at the projected capex over a period of 5 years and beyond, and when we start to normalize, and those once-off bow wave SIB have got themselves through the system, the steady state would be for both operations in the order of $8 million, which is still 33% thereabout more than what we're currently spending, or $2 million more than the average in recent years. But the $12 million we're spending in the next 2 years per annum is still, 50% up on what the steady end state would be. So the point is, it's not in 1 year, it's over 2 years, but it's a good observation. It's very, very high. I can provide some color in terms of where the focus is, if necessary, but it's very, very necessary to do that to play catch up. The bow wave, I think I must have said it in a previous session, the bow waves was always going to come. We're now in a position to quantify the magnitude. Why are you expecting cash costs to remain relatively flat next year compared to this year when production is guided to be 10 or 15% higher? Spot on. It's the right question. Cash cost is expected to remain relatively flat next year due to, first of all, inflationary price increases. We're still scrubbing down some of the assumptions, but they're in the order of 9-10% inflation on various expensive critical spares, raw materials that are needed for the operation. Obviously, there's the relative increase in variable costs, but there's additional maintenance costs in order to ensure reliability of the plants. I can tell you at Vametco that the maintenance budget, which is still to be approved, we're having a couple of iterations, is sitting at 30% more than it was in 2023. After you've dialed out, inflation, it's still in excess of 20% more in real terms, but very, very necessary to get the assets up to an acceptable level of reliability and get the plant efficiency up to at least 80%. I must add, that's not planned forever. It's to address the bow wave of under investing in maintenance in prior years, and that'll never taper back to where it was in 2023 or 2022, but to numbers at least half of what the increase we see in 2024. Question 15. With the tens of millions being spent on Vametco and Vanchem in 2024, what do you envisage production will be for both assets in 2025? Will the cash cost reduce following this works? The use of proceeds outlined on slide 4 is over a 2-year period. I mentioned that before. We've provided group production and cash guidance for 2024. We've not yet provided guidance for 2025, but we expect production for 2025 to be significantly higher than 2024, and therefore your 2025 unit costs will be noticeably lower than 2024 as well. When we've got that first phase of the Barham Dam constraint sorted, it's a 9-month window to do the first phase. We are planning to get the scope of work out, the inquiry, award the tenders, and get going by very early Q2 2024 with a view of finishing it up by the end of 2024, and then have an unconstrained production environment in 2025. And having spent the necessary increase on maintenance in H1 2024 to get those assets up to an acceptable level of reliability, we have a year in 2025 which is completely unconstrained. And that we expect to achieve these improvements through the implementation of various initiatives and, of course, the improved operational performance driven by those factors I've just mentioned, unconstraining our operation. That is all the questions on the that were pre-submitted. So the first question I'm reading from a distance here. Apart from the reduction in headcount, what are the potential benefits of simplification of the group structure? What are the potential benefits? Yeah, it's difficult to quantify when I haven't gone into the detail of the operations. But in my life, there's no doubt complexity comes at additional cost. Simplicity comes at reduced efficiencies. Whether it's the support services spend an immense amount of time, unnecessary amount of time on the energy business. It's going to take time to unwind, but when that's all done, I see a business that is focusing on the knitting, just on our 2 operations. Part of the restructuring of our business is moving away from what was typically traditionally a centralized model to a decentralized model, where the operations, where as many people as you've got actually work and live at the operations. Significantly easier to make people accountable and reward them if they do well, and just cleaning up that whole complexity around who's actually accountable between the operations and the corporate center. Corporate center will no doubt bring simpler, faster, more effective decision making and stop some of the inertia that we face to make decisions and get on with the business. What I don't know yet is the size of the opportunity at the operations. I deliberately excluded the operations when we were looking at the corporate head office in terms of opportunity, and I think it worked well because the focus has delivered good results. 40% reduction in positions that are no longer necessary. We will, when the time is right, when we've got some stability at the operations, go through a similar exercise to see what can be done to simplify things there and see what benefit maybe the last example I would mention around simplification. We've got 10 times more suppliers than we should have. We don't have half the suppliers we should on contract, and that brings complexity because end users run off and start buying their own goods and services at a premium. It comes late. You can't manage the expediting of goods. When you've got a sound contract in place with a preferred supplier, you've got service level agreements where goods and services arrive on time, and if they don't, they're in default. That's another area of opportunity of further simplification that I think is going to bring benefit in terms of expediting spares timely, but also benefit of reducing our total spend on creditors. I hope that answers the question. What is happening to BE? Yeah, well, as I said, the exercise for VRFBH, we're looking for a buyer in that space, and part of the restructuring of the corporate center is the entire Bushveld Energy will no longer form part of the makeup of the corporate center. We want to do it in a responsible way. Other than what's in VRFBH, there's not a huge value accretion opportunity in the other side of deployment and things like that. But we're going to cut the umbilical. We're those part of the restructuring. There's no resources or activity going to be left in the energy side of this business. We'll do that over a period of time. In the next in the first quarter of 2024, all the staff have been notified. It is what it is. We've got to stay myopic on the mining business. So energy won't be part of Bushveld structure going forward. When will the mini grid be operational? Yeah. So the mini grid is complete. The Celsius batteries up and running. All the panels are up there. We're running it at a small capacity. We could run it tomorrow and at full capacity, and which would generate 10% of Vametco's energy requirements. What we're waiting for, and it's a legal requirement, is for one of Eskom's outsourced service providers to provide us with a compliance certificate. We absolutely believe it's a matter of when rather than if. It's not a complicated issue. It's just trying to get this outsourced service provider of Eskom to come out, do the test, give us the compliance certificate, and we can get on with life. So, for all intents and purposes, it's ready to operate and provide Vametco with the full 10% of the energy, which was always part of the original design. Just keep on scrolling. What's happening to Belco? Sorry, I missed that one. Okay. So Belco, I said we went out to nine international companies. 3 have come back and have approved us. Not a great time to get approval December when the year's looming about commitments on potential offtake agreements. 2 big organizations have asked us to send those additional liters. We wait for feedback. We haven't got any firm order commitments yet, and if nothing's forthcoming by the end of Q1, we're not going to fund this business working capital forever. Then we'd have to look at an alternative for Belco as well. But everybody's shutting down at the moment, so we'll pick this up in the new year. We would all be delighted if we could get meaningful offtake agreements in place for serious quantum of electrolyte, so we can celebrate success. But time will tell. So what is it? Just 5 and 9. About 50% of the companies we reached out to have come back and responded to us. The others are not interested. So time will tell with those 3 that we've been given the nod formally, and the other 2 that we've provided with significant quantums of electrolyte. assuming they approve us, whether there's any real orders in the making. Time will tell. Just keep scrolling, please. Okay, stop there. What is an appropriate level of gearing or debt equity for the business following the restructuring of its capital base? A lot lower than it is now. Look, I mean, I think in the mining industry, which is so cyclical, you want to get into a position where your gearing is less than 50%. You know, I've seen organizations, you can't time the cycle. That's the problem. You know, if you're at the peak of the cycle, I think you can live with 80%. If you're at the bottom of the cycle, like we are now, you can't. And that's the challenge we find ourselves. I think to play it, I wouldn't say conservatively, but play it prudently. You want to have your debt to gearing ratio below 50%. That'll go a long way to weather the storm when we get these cycles. Where does Craig see Bushveld Minerals in 5 years' time? Question from a long-term investor. Let me get out my crystal ball. So if you believe in the cycle that we've experienced before, we should be closer to $40 a kilogram. We're currently at about 30. So what's that? That's 25% up on where we are now. Based on our draft business plan, for every 10% improvement in the revenue, whether it's exchange rate or price, you add $20 million onto EBITDA. $20 million. So if we're at $40 per kilogram versus 30, it adds, what's that? $50 million onto the bottom line. We'll be printing money. I've said this before. This is a top line business. It's so sensitive to the revenue. And I've also said this. It's very difficult to make respectable levels of profitability at the current dollar per sales price. So I think that's the first assumption. If you're going to get that, I mean, when I got here in sort of July, August, we were running at 35, 36. Not inconceivable to get back to that in 5 years' time. So that's the first caveat. If we get on that journey to the projectile of $40, we'll be printing money to start off with, but it would be irresponsible to merely rely on our current capacity because we're missing out on a huge opportunity. And I'd like to see us at volumes that are significantly higher than where we will be even in 2025 when we got an unconstrained view of unconstrained plan. I'm not, and it would be irresponsible of me to say what that production outlook will look like. We've got Kiln 1 at Van Kim, which I'm told in its heyday was doing about 100 to 120 MTV per month. We have already kickstarted. You might have seen in slide 8, I think there's $100,000 been earmarked for growth. That's for the pre-feasibility study on Kiln 1. Everybody tells me this is a dripping roast. This is going to be the best thing since sliced bread. But I'm never convinced until I see the bankable, feasible document. So that's a long way around of saying I see a Bushveld that's still focusing only on the mining business, so we don't take our eye off the ball, that has got revenue that is significantly more north of where we are now, aided by the demand in vanadium. I see an environment where we have got significantly more capacity than we've got now. Want to qualify that again after we've done the pre-feasibility bankable document. And to me, so that's the easy part. The challenge is to make sure that our base that we're developing for 23 and 24, let's call it 24 has got to be the new norm, where we've got a much leaner CHQ. And after we've got all the right-sizing and operational efficiencies in the operation. That becomes the new norm. You keep that. You be disciplined with that new norm. You see a business that's doing exceptionally well. Why is the kiln at Vanchem failing so soon after refurbishment? I'm not sure what refurbishment you're talking about, and how far back it was. How many years back refurbishment has been referred to. What I can tell you is that the kiln needs to be relined every year, and they use refabricated bricks, which is a high intensity heat brick. It needs to be done every 12 months, and it was slightly overdue in June of this year, and that's what we should have done. We didn't have any funds for it, but even if we did have funds for it, I wouldn't have supported it because we didn't have any credibility. We had to take the calculated risk of pushing it out and sweating the assets. It worked very well until the end of October when we got to 180 circa MTV. But we've had a few hot spots that are materializing too frequently. It's just run out of its useful period for relining that kiln. We are limping along, to be honest with you. But what we are doing now is bringing forward. I mean, when we did that relining in, I think it was November. Can't remember actually. I think anyway, it was 10 days. We had a shutdown, an unplanned but very necessary shutdown to fix up a section of the report we got from the preferred suppliers that there's a strong likelihood you can go through to Q2 2024, and that's what we got in the business plan. That's not going to work. We're going to have to bring that forward. And as soon as the contractors come back in January, second week of January, we're going to bring that entire shutdown forward and do it early. We've gone 7-8 months beyond the designed period for relining. But I'm not sure if I'm answering your question properly, because I'm not sure what period of refurbishment you're referring to. I'm only aware of what has happened since I've been here. Craig's response to the last question, still working with Fortune, seems to have been disrupted. There was a pause for a few seconds and the presentation screen refreshed, and I didn't get to hear his entire response. Yeah, so thank you for asking that question again. My response to the question on Fortune was, given that we've stated our intention to sell our interest in Celltube, I have not been working with Fortune on any aspects of the business for quite some time. And the other part was, is he on the payroll? And what I can absolutely confirm are there are no further payments to Fortune. What plans are there for dual listing? No, it's not even on my radar. I mean, it's on my radar at 1,000 miles, up in but it's not. I've got too many other things to focus on. Really, I've just got to focus on sustaining the business, getting the operational efficiencies. I mean, I wouldn't even attempt to do that where we are right now. We haven't got the level of credibility yet. We've got to have more sustained performance and demonstrate that we're not out of the woods yet, So we're working very hard at it, and there are some really good stories to suggest that we're getting back to winning ways, but we're not there yet. And it's not something that I'm going to even consider until I can put my hand on heart and say absolutely, we've delivered and we've arrived, and we deserve a dual listing. But until then, no. Any update on why Tanya left so abruptly? Well, she didn't leave. I suspended her because of a failure to declare a material conflict of interest. And the disciplinary hearing was supposed to happen at the latter part of December. She lives in London. It's important that she be here in person. She couldn't get here, so we're looking for a date as soon as possible in January. We're an independent chairperson, which we are in the process of identifying through a professional service. Will chair the meeting. That's about as much as I can say on the subject at this point in time. Will the sale proceeds of Bushveld Energy and Cellshield go directly towards debt reduction? Yeah, I mean, we've got more than sufficient cash to do creditors, to do the payment of Orion in 2024 and 2025. So there's just additional funds that'll come in. We'll use it for what when it materializes, we'll decide what is best to be used for. There's no burning need to get inflow from the sale of Bushveld Energy business to fund any debt. That's already been covered from positive EBITDA in 2024 and 2025. We know vanadium price is in the gutter. What is the current cash outflow per quarter, and how long can Bushveld survive with such prices before the vanadium price inevitably rises? So we've modeled our prices for 2024 on a value that's midpoint between what we saw in the October and November. So we've taken based on our intel, a fairly conservative view. Based on it's the midpoint between what we received actually for sales in between November and October. November being lower than October, and that's average for the whole year. It's slightly low in the first quarter, and it gradually works up and gets to an average of a number that's very close to what we achieved between October and November. And even at that price, we've got noticeable positive EBITDA. At the production numbers I shared with you earlier, 4.43 MTV. So as long as the numbers don't get significantly worse than that, we'll be able to have a positive outlook from an EBITDA perspective and cash flow. It's not enough, I must add, to fund the entire capital for next year. But certainly enough to keep us, well above water, including all the payments to Orion in 2024 and 2025, and some in 2026. But by 2026, one would, if the trend is your friend, believe that price has got to be more reflective of where it was when I joined the company in July, 35, 36, north of that, then we'll be okay. The next question is, will the sale proceeds of Bushveld Energy and Cellshield go towards debt reduction? I think I've answered the same question as previously. Okay, we're done. Very good.
Yeah, perfect, Craig. Thank you for that. I think you've addressed all those questions from investors. And of course, the company will review all the questions submitted today and will publish those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. But just before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to the company, Craig, could I just ask you for a few closing comments?
Yes, certainly. So I really hope that the presentation that I shared with you today demonstrates Bushveld's clear vision and solid operational framework. As we look ahead, we're confident in our ability to navigate the evolving market landscape and deliver long-term value. I'd like to thank all the shareholders that have supported us and continue to support the company. I hope this presentation provides you with all the information needed to support the resolutions placed forward at the general meeting coming up on the 27th of December. I thank you very much. Bye now.
Perfect, Craig. Thank you once again for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Bushveld Minerals Limited, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good afternoon to you all.